This is some Park Avenue bullshit, I fumed, slamming shut my copy of 100 Years of Solitude. I'd been sitting in the well-appointed waiting room for almost an hour before the doctor called my name, and then it was only to squeeze some dilating drops into my eyes and send me back into the waiting room while they took effect. That had been a half hour ago. At least I guessed as much. Now that my pupils were fully dilated, I couldn't make out the numbers on my watch, or the print of my book either, which left me nothing to do but stew. The whole thing was a massive waste of time. There was nothing wrong with my vision, apart from nearsightedness. My regular ophthalmologist, Dr. Lee, had said so before she referred me here, just to be extra sure. It had seemed like a fine idea at the time, but that was before I'd pissed away the better part of a summer afternoon in a waiting room. Of course, I had nowhere else to be, really. Having just returned to New York for summer break after my sophomore year in college, I had nothing lined up until my acting apprenticeship started at the Williamstown Theater Festival in a few weeks. I'd spent the last few days bumming around the city, sleeping late in my childhood bed, seeing old friends, and taking care of annoying bits of business like this doctor's visit. That and crying uncontrollably. Not a day had passed since I left Yale that I hadn't broken down in tears, weeping with the kind of brio only a teenager can manage. The crying was very time-consuming, and once you factored in the hours I spent rereading old journal entries and tearing up photographs, really there weren't enough hours in the day. Of course, breaking up is hard to do, especially for the first time. I'm gonna call him, I decided, as I stared at the blurry blue book jacket on my lap. But by the time I located a payphone near the bathroom, my belated sense of dignity showed up and stayed my hand. Plus, I didn't have a quarter. It's pointless anyway, I reasoned, a familiar lump forming in my throat. I'd called him yesterday, and the day before that, and always the answer was the same. The romance had run its course. Froglegs and I were through. Froglegs earned his name after my grandmother saw Sam in his boxers one morning, when he was staying at my parents' over spring break. "Iranakya," she attempted in a whisper. Nonnie's whispers never really pan out. She is permanently set on town crier mode, like she's got a built-in megaphone in her vocal cords. I shot her a reprimanding look, which triggered her giggling, which blossomed into a guffaw until that crazy Italian had to take a seat so she didn't have a heart attack from the exertion of howling with laughter. "What'd she say?" asked Sam, smiling. Having been raised by psychologists in a home where respectful communication reigned, it didn't even occur to him that my grandmother might be openly deriding him. "Oh, she's just razzing me, about having a boyfriend." I ran my fingers through his dark, wavy hair and glared at Nonnie. After that, the big joke in the family was that my boyfriend had lady legs. A few months after the breakup, I was able to see the humor in this, but at the beginning of the summer, when the heartache was still fresh, every mention of frog legs had me bawling like a kid whose ice cream fell off the cone. Yes, Sam was my double scoop of ice cream with sprinkles, except that he hadn't fallen off the cone, he'd jumped. I'd met Sam in a Shakespeare scene study class required for our theater major, and we'd fallen hard for each other while rehearsing the Romeo and Juliet balcony scene. Just like those star-crossed lovers, though, our relationship was intense but brief. After 4 months together, Sam broke up with me at the end of sophomore year. We'd been fighting for a few weeks, but the final nail in the coffin was when I sneaked into his email account while he was in the shower. I was shocked to discover an email he'd written to a friend in which my beloved had described me as high maintenance and clingy. When Sam came out of the shower, I was in tears, begging him for an explanation. "You read my emails?" he asked, shocked. I guess that was a first for him. "Just this once," I sputtered. "Hardly ever." I saw his face set like a decision had been made. I started talking fast. "But that's not the point. Let's stay on the subject, which is, I just love you so much. I mean, these have been the best 4 months of my life." "Okay, listen," he said, sitting next to me on the edge of the bed and putting his hand on my arm. "You're great." "No, I won't listen to this. I do not accept this." "Nicole, come on, let's..."